Joining us now, the ranking member of the House Intelligence Committee, Connecticut Democratic Congressman Jim Himes. Congressman, it's only taken a day for the president to put in doubt something that his acting attorney general just said yesterday. How much stock do you put now in what Todd Blanche said, that it's been shut down?
Yeah, well, Anderson, look, I think as a practical matter, it's been shut down. I mean, when you have, the majority, or at least a substantial number of Republican senators saying this is toxic and we will vote yes on an amendment to make sure it never sees the light of day. What we're seeing here, of course, is just sort of chapter 2 of what you were just talking about, which is the president's essential character, which is that he can never gracefully admit that on this one I lost and, let's move on to the next thing. He just always needs to win everything, even when it's as absurd and hideous, frankly. And you may recall, I was one of the last people out of the chamber on January 6th. I had a very personal experience with the just awful people who were defecating in the Capitol, who attacked police officers, who were determined to stop the peaceful transfer of power. And now he's trying to get us all to believe that these people were, in fact, the victims. So, again, it's just, another Wednesday in Donald Trump's world.
Does it say anything to you that the acting attorney general told Congress he would not be putting anything in writing as to the fate of the fund? And also the fact that the president and his family still get the break of something which may be valued as much as $100 million to not have any more pursuit by the IRS against them.
Yeah, and we're going to work on that, too. We're going to work on stopping that as well. But no, I mean, does it surprise me one bit? Of course it doesn't. Look, we've seen this movie over and over and over again, which is that anybody who decides to compromise their own soul and their own integrity by becoming a servant of Donald Trump must forever try to both live in the real world, which involves a lot of Republican senators absolutely pissed off about the toxic quality of this fund, but also to never, ever do what Donald Trump would never do, which is to admit defeat and say, no, we're moving on. Todd Blanche can't do that. If he does that, he gets fired. Now, why people decide they want to be Todd Blanche, power, I guess, is fun. He's got cars and a big office and stuff, but, he can't. No cabinet secretary can, in any way countermand or even steal the spotlight from Donald Trump.
You're the top Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee. I just want to play something one of your Republican colleagues in the Senate, Tom Tillis, said about President Trump choosing his housing finance director, Bill Pulte, to be the acting director of national intelligence, who has no actual experience in intelligence.
I think he's the worst form of sycophant and advisor to the president that is going to hurt the president's legacy and his ability to continue a great agenda, of which I support the majority.
What do you think of this person, even just on an acting basis, being the DNI? What does it mean for national security?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, as much as I appreciate Tom Tillis Unchained, it's worse than just being a sycophant. As we were just discussing, being a sycophant is the price of entry to have a position anywhere near Donald Trump. What's worse than that is that Bill Pulte, as this obscure and esoteric chairman of FHFA, making himself chairman of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. I mean, believe me, corners of the government don't get a lot more obscure than that. He used that position for the sole purpose to go after the Attorney General of New York, Letitia James, who Donald Trump didn't like, Adam Schiff, and Lisa Cook, governor of the Federal Reserve Board. So here is a guy who has shown that he has no interest in his job. All he wants to do is go after the president's political enemies. And the reason you take some pause is because, quite frankly, sitting on top of the Federal Housing Finance Administration, you do not begin to have the tools and the power that you do atop the $90 billion American intelligence community. So his appointment is not just insane, it's quite likely to put a bullet in our ability to reauthorize something that the president says he wants to reauthorize, which is the FISA 702 surveillance program. So, I mean, again, you just look at this stuff and say, who's minding the shop? Who's keeping this 5-year-old under control?
Yeah, Congressman Himes, thanks so much. I appreciate it.